Yesterday, when I had a chance to sit down with Brian Flynn from Super 7, I took the first few minutes before we went live to introduce myself because I knew who Brian was, but he had virtually no idea who I was, despite the introduction I had in my email. And one of the things I told him was the reason that I started this YouTube channel. And I told him there were two reasons. The first was that information regarding Super 7's Toho products was so scarce that I wanted a place to sort of collect it and distribute it with other people who cared about their products. But the second reason, and I think the more important reason, was that I felt the discourse online regarding Godzilla products and even Godzilla movies was just really becoming divisive and toxic and unproductive. And so I wanted to try and put content out there that explained, the nuance of certain situations, or to say, things aren't nearly as dire as some folks would have you believe. And Brian and we had a chance to sort of share this moment where we were both like, yeah, it gets really tiresome participating online in discussions around Godzilla, and it really shouldn't be. For anyone who doesn't know, Brian is turning 75 years old this year, and so he mentions during the interview that he's been collecting Godzilla for 31 years, I think, or maybe 33 years, which is longer than I've been alive, by the way. And he was, I think he had a moment where he was like, oh my God, I'm old. But one of the things we talked about was how back when he started collecting Godzilla, there wasn't very much out there. It was like there was one or two products, maybe. And sometimes the companies that made those products would create variations of the products, different colors, slightly different retools or shapes or whatever. And back then, there were a couple of different products out there, and different crowds tended to like these different products. You'll see during the interview that we use this analogy of hot dogs, and that's because during our preamble, we were talking about it, and he was saying back then it used to be, a hot dog would come out and you would only be able to eat it with mustard. And then eventually, relish came out, ketchup came out, and so as people would talk about how much they like hot dogs, some people would be like, oh, hey, like I like mustard on my hot dog. What do you like? They'd be like, oh, like I like ketchup on my hot dog. And despite the fact that you liked your hot dogs in different ways, you were able to enjoy the hot dogs. You were able to celebrate the hot dogs. Whereas these days, if you like your hot dog with ketchup, the folks who like mustard are over there like,
ketchup sucks.
We talked about how it's really strange that there's so much product out there. Like, so many people should be happy, but so many people aren't happy. And it's just this divisive sort of environment online when it comes to talking about Godzilla. And we talked about how YouTube in particular incentivizes an environment of negativity, because negativity is what gets those clicks and gets those interactions. Brian mentioned specifically how he felt like there was room and somewhat of a need for people online on YouTube to have a little bit more of an optimistic and grounded take on Godzilla collecting in the modern age. That's not to say that things need to be super positive, lovey-dovey all the time, but just conversations should be more genuine and authentic. You can be negative to a certain degree, and you can be positive to a certain degree. And also this understanding that, one person's enjoyment doesn't have to be somebody else's enjoyment of the same thing. You can all like different things. We can all celebrate different aspects and nooks and crannies of this hobby. That is really what I've been trying to do with my YouTube channel. And to celebrate 3,000 subscribers is unreal to me. I honestly have a hard time believing it. I never really thought I would get this much traction and this much engagement, and I'm always so thankful to see how many folks are happy and appreciative of the content that I put out. At the end of all of my videos, I always say thank you so much for watching, because I truly mean it. Like I appreciate how much time people, like, I think we're approaching like 10,000 hours of view time. Like, people have watched my stuff for 10,000 hours. That's insane. All of the channel members that every month they contribute a couple of dollars towards what I do here. Like, it goes such a long way. And, I'm just really happy to be able to engage with folks in the ways that I do. So for you watching this video, I appreciate the absolute hell out of you. Thank you so much for your continued support. And I look forward to, trying new things with the channel, putting out new types of content, new types of videos when I can, because, being a new dad is rather time consuming. One thing that I am going to try with the channel in the relatively near future is we're going to try piloting a podcast type of long form content. This was something that I heard in my 2000 subscriber live stream, that there was a little bit of an appetite for a longer form content, something that you could listen to in the background, doesn't have like the music or the edits, anything like just a raw conversation. So I've got a couple of folks who are willing to try this with me, and we'll put out episode 1, I guess, relatively soon. We're going to be recording it this weekend, or at least that's the plan. Maybe you'll dig it. Maybe you'll like it, but think that there's room for improvement. Maybe you'll hate it. I hope that you're just honest with me and give me a sense of, where you're at with it. For me, there's definitely a couple of benefits to a piece of content like this. One is that it allows me to casually cover topics that have come up in the past month, but don't really warrant an entire video on their own. And two is that it gives me a piece of content to work on that doesn't require me writing out notes or writing out a script for what I want to say in like a super cohesive manner. I jump online with a couple of friends and I give you a very open, honest conversation around what I'm feeling about certain product reveals or certain, pieces of news. So you can look forward to that in the future, and it should be sometime soon. I'm working to get the Brian Flynn interview edited and ready as soon as possible, but I also want to make sure I take my time with it and put the care into it that it deserves. But as a thank you for helping me reach 3,000 subscribers, here is an exclusive first look at the KaijuCanuck Brian Flynn interview. 2 exclusives that you've done have gone off gangbusters. The Thirsty for Blood Godzilla sold out, I think, when it hit your website in like 7 hours. And then the minus color variant sold out in 13 hours.
2 different dynamics completely. The Thirsty for Blood, that's one where went to San Diego with it, and I was like, I don't know if people are going to be interested. And Kyle actually brought up the idea of repainting it as the Thirsty for Blood Dark Horse thing. And, to be fair, because I'm old, I was just like, well, do enough people even know what that was? I mean, that was in the 90s, and Kyle's like, no, you have to remember, for somebody my age, this is our gateway to Godzilla. This was huge. For me, it was like, oh, it's a Godzilla comic. There was a Godzilla comic in the 70s,
Yeah.
Just, and he was like, it's huge for me. And I was like, all right. Okay, that makes sense. I like the idea. Good idea, Kyle. The minus color version was coming out to theater. We talked about that. We'd be like, oh, that would be pretty cool to bring back. But I was wary of making too many, because you don't want to just keep, I hate to say beating a dead horse, but I don't want people to get too crazy with it. I was convinced, I still don't like it, but I was convinced that we could make it a limited one and tell people how many we made. I really dislike the concept of telling people how many you make, because it creates a few negative situations in my mind. One, people get hung up on how many were made and not what the actual product is. It drives demand usually from people that aren't buying it for themselves. They're buying it to resell because it's limited to this, or that gives it a justification.
To that point, like, both of these exclusives have sold like very, very successfully. And I know, and I appreciate the fact that you try to protect the like value, but also like the nature of the exclusive. And so like that very first Shogun SDCC box you did, like that sold out very quickly. So you reissued the card one, same figure. Well, not exactly the same because the color was slightly different, but it was
slightly different green, but yes.
But it was accessible. It was like, if you care about this figure, forget the limited nature. If you just wanted the toy, here's the toy. Exactly. And so I wanted to ask, like, for the Thirsty for Blood or for minus color, are the doors closed to those, or do you think that we could revisit them in a different form factor or a different style?